Okay, good morning everyone. Shalom Aleichem, Baruch Haba. We're continuing in Mishna Berura, Daf Hashavua, Siman Samach Hey. We're in the Shita of the Rama. The Mechaber said that if you paused in middle of Shema or the Berachos Kriya Shema, the amount of time it would take to complete the whole thing, you're Yaitse, even if it was an Oines. However, the Rama said some say that if it's an Oines, if it was extenuating circumstance, and you interrupted Kedei Ligmar's Kula, then you go back to the beginning. And that's the minhag. Says the Rama, U'mesharin inyan hashia lefi hakarev loy lefi roiv b'nei adam. When we determine, did you pause the amount of time it takes to finish the whole thing, the determination is based on how long it takes you to finish Shema, and not most people. V'chein hu lekaman mesiman kovdal. Likewise, when we're determining the kedei lishos es kula, kedei ligmar's kula, by Shemana Esrei. So we're up to Sivkat and Daled. You go back to the beginning. Some say that if it was an anos and you were mafsek kedei ligmar's kula, you go back to the beginning. Chayzer kol zeh le'inyan diyaved. This is all b'diyaved. Av l'chadchila, v'l'chadchila lo yafsik lishos kedei ligmar kula. L'chadchila, you cannot interrupt to finish the whole thing. Afilu shaloi machmas einas. Meaning, the Rama is saying that you only have to go back if it was kedei ligmar's kula, if it was ba'einas. But l'chadchila, you should not interrupt kedei lishos kedei ligmar's even shaloi machmas einas. Why shouldn't you interrupt? Because we're choishish for the poskim that hold even shehiyah without oines, you have to go back to the beginning. What about if you interrupted the amount of time, but it was not kedei ligmar's kula? So later on, the Mishna Berura says that according to everyone, you go back to the pasuk that you interrupted in. And there are those who say you only need to go back to the word that you're up to. To be lishois, lechatchila, by kriyas ha-Megilla, the Pri Megadim says it's aser. Because the reason is you need to read it like an igeres, and in igeres, they only pause one neshima. What about a sheikh tzibur that's singing in the middle of chazar sashatz? So now there's a pause. Okay, Reb Shlomo Zalman says, Ein zem meshubach, but it's not a hefsek. Okay, weiter. The Mishna Berura continues. Va'afilu b'shtika b'alma, even just silence. Va'afilu b'davar shu midrabanan, even saying which only midrabanan kugan berachas kriya shema, v'Hallel u'Megilla u'chahai gavna. All of these things you should avoid being mafsek, even if it's not kedei shaloi tigmar kula. V'chol shekein de betfila yesh lizar ma'od b'zeh. Certainly by tefillah you should be very careful. Ki yesh machmirin betfila afilu b'diavad. There are those who are machmir by tefillah even b'diavad. Now, we already saw in Mishna Berura of Katan Beis yesterday that the din of the Mechaber holds if you're shah kedei ligmar's kula, you don't have to go back. That's only for Kriya Shema. But for Tefillah, you do have to go back. Excuse me. Yesterday we learned that the din of an oinus that you have to go back for is machmas ha'ish she'inoi ra'oi, or the makom is not ra'oi. But machmas listim, you don't have to go back. That's only for Kriya Shema. For Tefillah, you do have to go back. Now we're learning there's another chumrah of Tefillah. And namely, even if you're not mafsek kedei ligmar's kula. Umashmi dever amagam t'chachil nachin azar shlo yinagin ashel tzibur harbe beberchas Kriya Shema sheyeh behefsek echad kedei ligmar kula. L'chatchila, the shel tzibur should be careful not to sing very long in berchas Kriya Shema, that the hefsek should be kedei ligmar kula. She'az yitztorchu hakahal lahafsek harbe b'shtik al yadei, because that's going to cause the kol to be mafsek greatly. Meaning, if you have this chazonish piece and it's a 4-minute piece, and it takes you 3.5 minutes to say the first bracha of Kriya Shema, then it's going to be a problem for the tzibur. Venerally, the kol shekain yeshus are berachas kayanim. Mishna Berura says certainly you should be careful by berachas kayanim shu midaraisa shelo ya'arichu az hakol ba'amiras hatachnunim beis berachas hakayanim, that the kahal should not elongate the saying of tachnunim during the berachas kayanim. Shalidei zeh shoiskin hakayanim zman harbe be'emtza bracha. By doing so, the kayanim will be silent for a very long time. So yeah, that's actually something to think about, because when people say the Ribbono Shel Olam, or they're saying the Yehi Ratzain, isn't that in a way longer than Kedei Ligmar Es Kula? Therefore, it's good to do what I saw brought in the name of the Gra. That you should do that which is brought in the name of the Gra, that the third time you should say the Ribbono Shel Olam, and not the long Yehi Ratzain. That's what I do. I don't say the long Yehi Ratzain. I say the Ribbono Shel Olam. Ki b'harbe pa'amim matzu she'en ha'kohanim menagnim klal. Many times the kohanim are not singing at all. They're standing there and waiting. It sounds like if they're singing, maybe that's part of the Amiras HaTeva. But if they're just singing, if they're silent and they're waiting until the call finishes their Amira, and because of this, often there's enough time Kedei Ligmaras Kula. Velanois Kaddish or Kedusha, to answer Kaddish or Kedusha, mutter l'shois, it's mutter to delay. Afilu Kedei Ligmaras Kula. To answer Kaddish or to answer Kedusha, let's say during Berachas Kriyas Shema, it's okay, even if it's Kedei Ligmaras Kula. Umashna b'sefer Shulchan Shloimeh, it's mashna the Shulchan Shloimeh. The davkim who oimed b'soif Berachas Emes V'Yatzev. It's only if you're standing at the end of Emes V'Yatzev, dahainu eitzel Shira Chadasha. That is by Shira Chadasha. Ukil kaman b'seif Siman Samach Bav. Aval ma'adayin lo higia l'shir Chadasha. Tov yoser sheyisha b'sheirugin be'emtza bracha kam pamim pachas mikdei ligmar kula. This is very interesting, that we're learning now to say Kaddish or Kedusha, you're allowed to delay in Berachas Kriyas Shema, even to finish the whole bracha. But that's mashma. It's mashma in the Shulchan Shloimeh. That's only if you're standing at the end of the bracha, only if you're holding at the end of the bracha of Emes V'Yatzev. So if you're up to Shira Chadasha, you're at a stopping point. Then you could wait Kedei Ligmaras Kula. But if you're not yet up to Shira Chadasha, it's better to sort of stagger your delays. So in other words, it's better to maybe answer Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh at one place, and then say a few more words and say Baruch Kavod Hashem Mekaymai, because we only allow you to be Shak Kedei Ligmaras Kula at a legitimate stopping point. Okay. Now, we learned that, according to the Ramah, if you're Shak Kedei Ligmaras Kula, you have to go back to the beginning. What does that mean? Hainu im hifsik b'Kriyas Shema. If you interrupted in Kriyas Shema, afilu im ha'hefsik haya rak kedei ligmar ha'Kriyas Shema, even if the hefsik was only to complete the Kriyas Shema, choyze l'rosh Kriyas Shema. You go to the beginning of Kriyas Shema. Meaning, if you're holding in Kriyas Shema, then even if the delay was just to you delay the amount of time it takes to complete the Kriyas Shema. Let's say it takes you 4 minutes to complete the Kriyas Shema, and you delayed in the middle of a Hayam Shemaya 4 minutes, you have to go back to the beginning of Kriyas Shema. By Birchas Kriyas Shema, lo yachsel l'reish bracha. Don't go to the beginning of the bracha. Shapasak b'soicha. Elo im kein shak kedei ligmar mitchila Birchas Yotzer ad Gal Yisrael. Unless you delayed the amount of time it takes to finish from the beginning of Yotzer until Gal Yisrael. So if you delayed in the Birchas Kriyas Shema, then you have to wait. Then it's only a hefsek if you delay the amount of time it takes to complete from the beginning of Yotzer until Gal Yisrael. Now I wonder, is that including Shema? The Dirshu points out that later on, in Siman and Ches and in Siman Sadi, the Mishna Berura says, if you're Shah beberchas krishma kishir sheyesh ba kedei ligmar as kula, where there he says, you don't go back to the beginning. That's talking about where you were only Shah kedei ligmar that bracha. But if you're Shah kedei ligmar the whole berchas krishma, you have to go back to the beginning. If you delayed in berchas krishma between the brachas, you don't have to go back and make another bracha b'diavad. Aval b'kriyas shemayim hifsik ben parsha parsha machmas oinas v'shak ba kedei ligmar kol ha'parshiyos choyzer l'roish. V'hachi nahug, that's the minhag to follow the Ramah. V'chein pasku achroinim, that's how the achroinim paskim, that if you pause the amount of time it takes to finish the whole Birchas Kriya Shema, you have to go back to the beginning. The same thing would be B'tfilah by Shemana Esrei. If you pause the amount of time it takes to complete the whole Shemana Esrei, Hallel, if you pause the amount of time it takes to complete the whole Hallel. It's interesting because later on the Mishna Berura paskins, you don't have to go back because Hallel is midrabanan. Megilla, uberchas kayhanim, k'mayshvayarna b'ver halacha ayin sham, and it goes based on the particular reader, bein lahakal, bein lahachmer, whether to be lenient or to be machmer.
Does this include being quiet for kavanah? Person's trying to think of the words and sitting there and working on it, and it's not hesach hadas. He's still holding there, or is it just a din and shtika? If you're not saying the words, then you lose what you're saying. It doesn't seem to mention anything about hesach hadas or about having anything in mind. So
no.
Even if you're,
I would think that kavanah would not be considered a hefsek because there's a svara. There's a svara, first of all, that even when the kohanim are singing, that's not considered a hefsek. The Bir Halacha later on in Sim Kuf Chavches says it could be that kisha kohanim menagnim efshar gamzehu b'chal amiras hateva. So l'chayra, certainly by kavanah, we also had like you're supposed to be mechavein by the word echad certain kavanos, but you could be mechavein it after you finish the word. So why is that? Because the kavanah sort of it's still part of saying it. That's, I guess, that's what I would conjecture. I don't have a clear raya to that, but that's what I would think.
Well, maybe to a limited degree. I mean, if you're sitting there and
so what's the guy? How is it possible the guy's mechavein on the meaning of the words for the amount of time it takes to say the whole Kriya Shema? You mean he has like the Siddur Rashash?
He's thinking
right. I would think it's not a hefsek. Yeah. Okay, shkayach everyone. Have a good day. Bracha v'atzlacha. Second.
Recording stopped.